Scott Pilgrim's precious little life has never been seen quite like this before. I love the Scott Pilgrim series. It's one that's resonated with me deeply, and that really all started all those years ago when I watched Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in theaters. Now, I think the reason why it resonated with me so much is because I love video games, and I've never seen a movie shot, directed, or even looking like this ever. To see a movie framed like a game is something that is so unique to this movie, and it had me wanting more. I fell in love with the cast, and I loved their chemistry. I also really love the setting, the fictional town of Toronto, Canada. I wish it were a real place. And then that prompted me to go and play Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, when I got home, and God, I loved that one even more. Not satisfied with just those two, I went back and I read all of the graphic novels, picking up one every time I went to Barnes & Noble with my dad, and I ended up falling in love with this series deeper and deeper. Now, imagine my surprise when an anime adaptation of Scott Pilgrim was announced, done by Science Saru, reprising the entire cast of the movie that I loved so much. It's a lot to be excited about, and I would love to share my thoughts on Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Now, I'm going to be talking spoilers in this video later on. They will be marked on the screen with timestamps. So if you don't want to see anything beyond the initial premise, I will give you a heads up when it's on screen so you can click off the video. That is something that I would not want to rob people of experiencing for the first time. So if you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Joey. This is Dragon Hustle. I like to talk about games, anime, anything that interests me in depth and in detail. I like to make essays. So if you enjoy this, please feel free to check out anything else I've done. Do the funny YouTube engagement things, that really helps me out. Also, this is a completely off the cuff kind of thing. I don't have a script for this video. I'm literally just reading it off my phone, these bullet points that I have. So if it sounds a little rambly, that's why. Without further ado, let's talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. So for those uninitiated, Scott Pilgrim centers around, well, Scott Pilgrim, a rizless individual who lives in Toronto, Canada. Scott Pilgrim has a very chill and laid-back way of life. He enjoys playing music with his band, Sex Bob-omb with his bandmates, Kim and Steven, and he's currently dating Knives Chow, a high schooler, which is a big no-no, obviously, and his life is suddenly thrown into chaos when he starts having visions of a very pretty alt chick in his dreams. He learns that her name is Ramona Flowers, and that in order to date, he needs to go through a sort of boss rush in order to sort of court her, so to speak. Now, the reason why people love this series so much is because it's a time capsule to the period it was written in, the early to late 2000s, pop culture, video game references. The writing is also super tight, and the characters and the chemistry they share are really, really fun, and I'm very happy to say that all of that is intact for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is very interesting because I would call it a sort of New Game Plus, so to speak, for the series. It stands very well on its own, but it's also a very good jumping on point for people who are interested with the series, and it offers a very fresh and unique perspective on these characters that we've come to know and love for over 10 years now. And I think one thing that it really does right is that it fleshes out a lot of the characters in the series that previously didn't get as much screen time in any of the adaptations, be it the comic books or even the movies. It puts these familiar characters and these story beats that we recognize and know so well, and then kind of flips them on their head and puts them in situations that we've never seen before. And I think that's such an interesting thing to do with a series that, again, we've known so well for over 10 years now. But for those who do enjoy Scott Pilgrim, the game, the comic, the movie, the enjoyment you get out of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off kind of scales in proportion to that. There are so many callbacks and references down to like the panels in some cases to the original source material that diehard fans are going to just love and enjoy. There's a bunch of shot-for-shot recreations of the movie in this. There's a bunch of jokes from the movie, especially like some of the more iconic ones. So again, if you've seen this movie like a million times like I have, you're instantly able to just pick up all of those little things right then and there. But I think the biggest praise I have to offer Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is that everyone involved felt like they really loved this project. It shows in every single frame of this anime that everyone on board loved Scott Pilgrim, and this love carries it very, very far. Overall, I think it stands more than enough on its own, like I said before, and also pushes the envelope to what Scott Pilgrim can be. And I think that is so impressive and interesting for a series that has had its roots established for so long. Now, I'm going to talk spoilers here. Again, if you you don't want to come into Scott Pilgrim spoiled in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to talk about the first couple episodes and why I find them to be so interesting and unique for the series. So again, timestamps are down here on the screen. If you don't want to see this, please click off. I don't want to rob this experience from you. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off takes a very bold and interesting direction for the series. The first episode spends a lot of time setting up the characters and the setting, which we all know very well. There's a lot of time spent going through the Scott Pilgrim World Tour, as I call it, where the story beats and the moments and the shots from the comic and the movie are all here, down to the scene where Scott meets Ramona. But there are very tiny key differences in a lot of these scenes, again, to make them feel fresh. But the biggest difference is that at the end of the first episode, we see something that we have never seen before. So everything goes as it normally does. Scott meets Ramona, he hooks up with Ramona, then Knives comes down to a show, she faints, and then Matthew Patel crashes in, and then he declares that he's going to fight Scott Pilgrim. Then the moment of impact for their cross counter, Scott loses. And you're kind of left with this second to kind of digest that, where you knew that this was going to play out a certain way, and then the expectation is kind of twisted in on itself. As you boot up episode 2 and you see Ramona attending Scott's funeral, you're thinking to yourself, what the fuck? Are they committing to this bit? He's gonna come out any moment now, isn't he? And then he doesn't? Obviously, there is a lot more to it than that, but I would liken this a lot to the disappearance of Scott Pilgrim. They pull a Metal Gear Solid 2 on us, where Scott Pilgrim, as the name of the anime suggests, takes off and is not the protagonist of this series. Instead, the focus shifts to Ramona, which I think is a very excellent decision, because in every adaptation, I feel like Ramona needed to kind of face her demons herself, so to speak. Her 7 evil exes are hers, and it does feel weird for Scott to kind of fight them for her, especially when she is the one who carries all of that emotional baggage herself. They're kind of gatekeeping her from Scott, but again, I do feel like that was her battle to fight. Ramona then goes to find out what happened to Scott, interrogating her exes and settling her differences with them. I think this is a very bold, again, direction to take the series. This twist was hidden in all of the marketing, which is why I urge people to kind of watch this as blind as possible. And it also allows for some of the best character writing I've seen in the series. Taking Scott out of the equation does so much for the series, which is an insane thing to say for the titular character. But again, past this first episode, everything we see in this anime is completely unique to the series, and they get to get really funky monkey with this. I'm talking insane Sakuga, skateboard battles, fucking some of those evil exes are fighting each other. Like, it is such a treat for people who love Scott Pilgrim and know Scott Pilgrim so well, because you just don't know what to expect every time you boot up a new episode, and I think that is such a treat for people who already love this series and know what to expect. And again, this change in direction isn't a pivot away from what made Scott Pilgrim so fun and interesting. In fact, it doubles down on it. Again, it still makes those references to the movie and the books, but now it just puts them in context that we were never expecting. The initial twist of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off I think, is some of the most exciting and interesting stuff we've seen from this series in a really long time, and I'm just so excited and happy that it came out the way it did, because I think Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is really special, and you do owe it to yourself to check it out. That's gonna do it for today's video. I wanted to make something super quick about this because I cannot stop thinking about it. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to do the funny YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I am planning to make another big video, but this was a sort of quickie that I wanted to just throw out there and share my thoughts, a sort of stream of consciousness kind of video, and I had a lot of fun making it. So again, if you enjoyed it, please be sure to let me know in the comments. I also want to know what you guys thought about the anime in the comments below, but please, no spoilers. I want to thank Polis again for her work on the channel. I appreciate everything that she does, especially with the thumbnail art for this video. She drew Himawari with the cute little heart eyes in her signature style, and it's so good. Mwah. Thank you, Polis. Big appreciate you. And I would also like to shout out FireSTO for helping me compose the thumbnail for this. It is peak, and I think she drew that out when making that thumbnail, so I really appreciate her. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Stay gold, I'll see you next time, and take care of yourselves.